Come on a journey with a cinephile.
Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are.
We was getting too big for our britches.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
What have you done to its eyes?
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Pretty well, little brother. Pretty well.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that in episode 289. I am your host, David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here is going to be my Voyage Through the Fives number 8. So the two featured reviews that I have here are going to be The Ugly Stepsister and Condemned to Live. So this actually makes for an interesting double feature here, as we are dealing with mental illness in kind of a different ways, where people could become monstrous or kind of do monstrous things when they are pushed to limits that they don't know they have. And then I also have here mini reviews of Silver Bullet. This is my Voyage Through the Fives from 1985. I also gave a watch to Blind Woman's Curse. This actually doubles as a Journey Through the Aughts. I gave a rewatch to Deep Red. I now have a Blu-ray copy there. And then I gave another watch to Companion, which is a 2025 film, just kind of see where I sat with it. And then I have two documentaries here. Monster Madness. This is the third episode, the Gothic revival of horror. And then another one is going to be a cryptid documentary from Small Town Monsters of the Flatwoods Monster, A Legacy of Fear. So the only other thing I want to talk about here is that I got some cool stuff from an artist. And her name would be, I believe it's Alicia Burbenek. She had sent me some cool stuff here. It's like she sent me some stickers here. It looks like she might have hand-drawn. There's like Chatterer on here. I'll actually show this in the video. There's one that is from Halloween. We have Leatherface's face, a chainsaw, and then like the phone from A Nightmare on Elm Street, a TV, and then it looks like their own kind of logo and everything. That was kind of cool. They gave me a cool little postcard, as well as some more stickers like Do You Read Sutter Kane, as well as another one that I believe is from Maniac Cop, and then also an air freshener from The Wicker Man, which smells very nice. And there's also this like cool book where they did an illustrative discussion on films, and then they cover a few of them on here. I will actually show this on the back, but it's Persona, Mulholland Drive, Perfect Blue, Single White Female, Queen of Earth, and Us. So I definitely wanted to give credit here, give a shout out. I'll put some stuff in the show notes here for links for anything like that. But then that's all I'm going to do here then for this intro. So let me go ahead and say thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
I have a great thing here that I wanted to go ahead and give you an offer for, since it fell into my lap, and wanted to go ahead and share it with you. I have been given a promo code here for shimmerwoodbeverages.com. These are CBD infused seltzers that are award winning. They have been twice recognized by Forbes as the #1 CBD beverage in the United States and the best lower potency option out there. It blends full spectrum CBD with local Maine fruits and cocktail bitters for bold flavors, crafted without added sugars, caffeine, or artificial ingredients ingredients, which if you know me, that is something that I prefer because I get enough of the caffeine and I'm trying to get away from sugars. So it's designed for relaxation without intoxicating effects, perfect straight from the can or a refreshing cocktail or mocktail base, depending on what you're looking for there. This has unique flavors like raz lime, chai cherry, ginger orange, and just hemp. Now, Simmerwood offers a health-conscious alternative to sugary sodas or alcohol, made to revive a calm, clear focus for natural stress relief. Each can contains 5 milligrams of full-spectrum CBD for a balancing, calming effect. So this one here is at, like I said, shimmerwood.com, and my promo code here for you listeners is actually you get 30% off of if you use my code, and this is, like I said, a great deal if you can go ahead and you want to do that, and my code is going to be Cinephile1. So if you want to check out more of the information or check out their site, there will be links in the show notes for you to check that out there. And then for my first mini review is going to be Silver Bullet from 1985. This was directed by Daniel Entius, and then this was written by Stephen King. It stars Gary Busey, Everett McGill, and Corey Haim. This is a werewolf horror film that is from the United States. It is actually, let me double check to make sure that there's not it's also considered to be from the Netherlands, Antilles, and Italy. This is currently sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd or Synopsis Beam. In a small town, brutal killings start to plague the close-knit community. Marty Kosla, a paraplegic boy, is convinced that the murders are being done by a werewolf, and Haim is playing that character of Marty. So this is a film that I was late to the game in seeing. I sought it out after college when I was filling in the blanks of Stephen King properties that I hadn't seen before. This is one that I knew about well before seeing it because I had read the novella in high school and have a copy of it in my collection. I was excited to revisit this one since I hadn't seen it with a critical eye before. I'm now doing this as part of my voyage to the fives as well, and where I'm going to start is that this is a fun werewolf film. It is interesting that earlier in the decade we would have things like American Werewolf in London, which is a dark comedy with a great transformations. There's also The Howling the same year, which was darker take on the genre. This one is combining what King was great at with like the kids on bikes narratives with a creature feature. Having read the source material, I'm not shocked to see that it worked as well as it does. The only drawback is not leaning more into what the novella does with confirming what each month is and then having, you know exactly what attack happened and when. Now that I've set that up, let me delve a little bit more into what we're getting here. Now, we have a trio of main characters. It's interesting that our lead, Marty, is wheelchair bound. Now, that is in the source material, and Haim does a solid job at seeing him as this teen who doesn't have control of his legs. There's a cheesy factor with this point with the chairs that Uncle Red makes, and that would be done by Busey. It gives the name of the movie a dual meaning since that's the name of the motorized chair of Silver Bullet. Now, Busey does a great job as his uncle who never truly grew up, and this bothers his sister of Nan, portrayed by Robin Groves. Now, she's the mother of the kids, of course. Now, the last one to include here would be Jane. This is going to be the sister here, and she's portrayed by Megan Fellows. And I like that she and Uncle Red don't immediately believe Marty. They need evidence, and that helps to build the tension as they could be killed in the process. This family dynamic adds heart to the film. We also see how this ordeal changes people, contributing to the loss of innocence. They're also forced to grow up. Let's then shift over to another narrative aspect, and that's the detective story. There are giallo elements with a trio of people who are trying to find the truth who aren't necessarily police officers. Well, they're not police officers. Marty is the first to think that there could be a werewolf in the area. No one believes him because it's a fantastical thing, and also he's a child. Jane starts to consider due to the convictions, and also she finds evidence that matches up to what her brother says. Then I look at a different angle here. There is Sheriff Haller, who is portrayed by Terry O'Quinn. Now, he's in over his head. These crimes are worse than anything he's equipped to handle. Now, this causes friction with Andy and the others in town, and this Andy would be a guy who goes to the bar of Bill Simitrovich. Now, he's the one who leads a mob who's trying to take justice into their own hands. It doesn't help when loved ones are jumping in. It creates bigger problems since the evidence is ignored and people are biased towards what the group thinks. I do like this aspect being included here to deepen the story. We should then go over to the werewolf itself, and I love the reveal. I won't spoil it, but it falls in line with the duality of man, which is a classic theme when it comes to creatures like this. There's a great idea behind people who are targeted and how they would know certain things. Now, the creature doesn't look as good as some of the classic films in this subgenre that I've brought up, but that's not to say it looks bad. Carlo Rambaldi did a solid job. There are times when it looks great, and a couple instances where I was like, I could kind of see the seams of it. I'll still take the practical look any day. They do go violent with some of the attack scenes, credit there. I will say the cinematography and framing do help there. As I discussed, most of the filmmaking stuff, the soundtrack fits to build tension. Sound design aids there as well. All that's left then would be talking about the rest of the acting performances. I've already said what I need to for Busey, Haim, and Follows. McGill is such a presence. I love that he's this minister of this town. There's also a character ends up, being good as well. O'Quinn, Groves, Leon Rossum, Simitrovich, Lawrence Tierney, and the rest of the townspeople rounded this out for what was needed. I would also give credit here to Tova Feldschen, who's a great voice as the narration. She plays the older version of Jane. Now, in conclusion, this is a fun movie and one of the better werewolf films in my opinion. Does it go into the top tier that the ones I've referenced? No, it doesn't, but this one's a little bit more whimsical. That's not to say that it doesn't go brutally or goes into like scarier things with this werewolf. We have a solid cast, which helps. I do love the detective angle and trying to solve who the werewolf is. There are some slight issues with the effects, but since they are practical, I still give credit there. This is one that is well done in general on top of that. I do recommend this one to fans of the subgenre, this era, or if you just want to see some more of the Stephen King adaptations. So my rating here for Silver Bullet is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. Then my second review here is going to be Blind Woman's Curse. This goes by the original title of Kaden Nobori Ryu. This is from 1970. This is directed by Teiro Ishii, who also co-wrote this with Chushe Sone. This stars Meiko Kaji, Hoki Takuda, and Makoto Sato. This is an action crime horror film that is from Japan. This is currently sitting on a 6.5 on IMDb and a 3.4 on Letterboxd or Synopsis. The head of a Yakuza gang is being trailed by a mysterious, vengeful blind woman. So this is one I learned about through podcasts. I'm not entirely sure which ones now, but I was looking at Letterboxd and I'm guessing it was a 22 Shots of Moods and Horror. The other one would probably be Mr. Parka's. I was intrigued here due to the fact that Yakuza subgenre from Japan is a blind spot for me. Seeing that this was a crossover into horror felt like a good place to start, and I do actually know it's wild. I was listening to a podcast with my buddy Richard Glenn Schmidt, and he was talking about how people should see this one because he was bringing up something else this director has done, and he recommended this one. So I was definitely kind of glad that kind of lined up. So where I'm going to start is that this is my first foray, as I said. Not having seen any other ones to my knowledge of the Yakuza films, I was intrigued to dive in. I thought this one was visually stunning. There is constant action, a bit of comedy that doesn't go over the top. It also gets bloody at times. Now, playing almost like a slasher film with members of the Takibana gang being killed for being part of Akima's inner circle. Now, she's the daughter who has taken over, and she's portrayed by Kaiji. Now, with a runtime of just under 90 minutes, this one moves along at a good pace, and that is something I want to give it a lot of credit for because of it. Now that I have the setup, let me delve more into what we're getting here. The first thing is that stuck out to me is that the leader of the Takibana gang is a woman. I'm not sure how common this was for movies in the subgenre, but it's progressive for what I know about gangster films in general. Kaji is solid in her role as Akami. It looks like she is an actor who has done this before and after, so I'm intrigued to see more of her films now. And she commands this group. I'm afraid to even engage her into a sword fight, even today. Now, shifting slightly, I like the Yakuza elements as well. There is a minor subplot here where Akima's uncle wants them to get out of crime and go legitimate. It's not like that was a direction he was pushing them until she gets out of prison. Now, he runs a restaurant, and this is where Chaki Mitsui, portrayed by Yoko Takagi, works. I like that. We also see sabotage. One of the rival gangs is hiding opium at different stands in this marketplace that is being protected by the Takibana gang. Now, the police are alerted, and they raid the place. That was a good touch there as well. Doing these different things leads to a showdown at the end, and along with killing these gang members. I then want to go over to why this is a horror film in my opinion. The first would be that this is bloody. We also see people getting stabbed and then blood spraying out. That can go over the top at times, but the blood doesn't fully look real, but so there's also charm there because of it. They went practical with the effects. There was something that I love there. I'd also say that in the era where CGI wasn't a thing yet, this idea of a curse, Akimi accidentally slashes Aiko, and she is portrayed by Hoki Takuda. Now, causing her to be blind, there's a black cat that licks the blood. Well, that is what both women believe, that she is now cursed. Whether that's the case or not, Aiko blames Akimi, and she rightly so, even though Akayu was the one who was trying to protect her brother and she got in the way during a fight. This black cat also comes back into play later. I'll say that this plays like an early slasher film where we have these gang members who are being attacked and kind of picked off, and then they're skinned where they have these like dragon tattoos on their back or get removed. This isn't full-blown horror, but it's close enough for sure. Now, since I've already discussed the effects, let me go over to the rest of the filmmaking. The cinematography is beautiful. I'll include the framing to help hide the seams of the effects for the most part. There was a decapitation scene where it cuts in too early, and you could tell that the head dropped before the slash. That made me chuckle. There were shots here that were gorgeous, though. The fight sequences were good. I've also seen films where they do a little bit more, but I have no issues here either. Now, seeing this on Blu-ray also helps that as well. Other than that, I thought the soundtrack fit the vibe for what was needed. Also up then would be the acting performances. I've already said that I like Kaji, and she's great. She fits so well as leader of the gang. Takuda is good as well as her counterpart. She plays it so stoically, which makes her scarier. She puts these elaborate plans into motion for her revenge. We also have Makoto Sato, who works as Tani Souchi. Now, he is this guy who isn't in a gang, but he fights for what's right. This pits him against gang members to defend Chaki or Akima's uncle. Hijikata does some good things here with his body as his hunchback character. I should actually give his first name since I don't believe I have yet. Tatsumi. Also credit here to Taru Abi, as well as I believe Yoshi Kato, if I haven't said that name yet, and the other gang members. I thought they were all kind of good for different levels of villainy and fighting each other. In conclusion, I'm glad that I could finally check this one off my list. We have a great blend here of Yakuza, horror, and even comedy going a little bit over the top. Without going over the top, actually, I wanted to make sure I said that. I like the element of Akami being the head of her gang, and then on the other side, Aiko being this blind woman who wants to get the revenge, the titular one. The combination of elements here works in part due to the rest of the cast. The effects were a bit cheesy, but there's some charm there. This is made well enough. The cinematography is beautiful, and the framing helps there. I'd recommend this if you're into Yakuza films and want to see one with horror elements. So my rating here for Blind Woman's Curse is going to be an 8 out of 10. And my next one, I'm going to go a little bit brief here because I've covered it one other time on the podcast as well as I've covered it elsewhere. And this is going to be Deep Red. It goes by the original title of Profondo Rosso from 1975. This is directed by Dario Argento, who co-wrote this with Bernardino Samponi. This stars David Hemmings, Dario Nicolodi, and Gabriele Lavia. This is a giallo, slasher, horror mystery thriller film that is from Italy. It is currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb and a 3.9 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: a jazz pianist and a wisecracking journalist are pulled into a complex web of mystery after the former witnesses the brutal murder of a psychic. So if you would like to hear a mini review of this one, I did on episode 194, which was Traverse of the Threes number 16. This featured The Unheard and The Mad Ghoul. This is when I was going to a local theater where they were running through the Dario Argento films, so I got to see this one I think I've actually seen this one in the theater twice now. I know I've seen it at home twice as well, because I believe Duncan had us cover this for Where to Begin with Giallo. And so what I'll say here this time around is that this is one of Argento's best and probably my second favorite of his works. This follows the magician of Marcus Daly, portrayed by Hemmings, who is a witness to a murder and teams up with a reporter of Gianna Brezzi, portrayed by Nicolodi, to find the killer. There's a complex story that keeps you guessing. It is great that some of these leads will dead end, mostly due to the killer avoiding being discovered and making sure that she ties up things or he ties up things. Don't know if it could be either of those. Another thread will present to keep the investigation going, though. There's some creative death scenes thanks to the practical effects, great cinematography, and the excellent soundtrack by Goblin. The acting is good as well, particularly Nicolodi's empowered character. Now, Marcus is sexist, but that seems more with the writing and less on Hemmings' performance. Overall, though, I highly recommend this one for Giallo fans. So my rating after this one, I believe this has stayed the same for me for rating-wise, is I have Deep Red at a 10 out of 10. I'm also going to go brief with this review because I've also covered it earlier this year, and this is going to be Companion from 2025. This is directed by Drew Hancock, who also wrote this. This stars Sophie Thatcher, Jack Quaid, and Lucas Gage. This is got some, I'm going to skip one of these because I don't want to necessarily ruin it, but it's a dark comedy, psychological thriller, sci-fi film that is from, also considered this horror, United States. Currently sitting on a 6.9 on IMDb. Nice. And a 3.4 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being: a weekend getaway with friends at a remote cabin turns into chaos after it's revealed that one of the guests is not what they seem. So this one, I say, got ruined a little bit for me because of some of the trailer stuff, so I just wanted to kind of include there. So I'm trying to, once again, be non-spoilery. So this one, if you'd like to hear a featured review, is going to be episode 275, which was a Black Appreciation number 11. That doesn't necessarily work here, but I had this paired up with Antebellum. This actually worked for February being Women Empowerment Month as well, so that's kind of where I lean into for that one. So let's dive into Companion, as this is a horror flick that caught my attention with a trailer, and a spoiler on social media only piqued my interest further, even though I wish I didn't know about it. So this revolves around Iris, played by Thatcher, and her weekend trip to a billionaire's lakeside estate with her boyfriend Josh, who's portrayed by Quaid, and his friends. Now, it starts as a social gathering, quickly unravels as we learn that Iris isn't quite what everybody seems or thinks, and the host Sergey, who is portrayed by Rupert Friend, is far from pleasant. Hancock cleverly weaves in social commentary about toxic masculinity, bullying, misogyny, although occasionally feels a bit heavy-handed. Technology plays a big role here, from self-driving cars to subtle hints about what's really going on. Now, Thatcher delivers a compelling performance, and Quaid shines as the initially charming but ultimately flawed Josh. Supporting cast is solid, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. The isolation of the setting is captured effectively, and the practical effects are well done. While the social commentary could be more nuanced, Companion is enjoyable and thought-provoking horror film. I give it, once again, an 8 out of 10. Definitely worth a watch, and perhaps even a second viewing to catch all the subtle hints, especially if you can come into this one as blind as possible. So, like I said, 8 out of 10 here, once again, for Companion. Then let's dive into these two documentaries I have. First one's Monster Madness, the Gothic revival of horror. This is episode 3 of this one. This is from 2015. This is a documentary directed by Jeff Herberger, and then it was written by A. Susan Cinephile. Now, this features Aaron Christensen, Dwight Kemper, and John Kitley. This is a documentary that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.5 on IMDb, and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say about a 3-star over there, with the synopsis being part 3 of the multi-part documentary series with distinguished actors, directors, writers, composers, special effects mavens, examining the history of horror, fantasy, and sci-fi fiction films from the groundbreaking silent 1920s through the golden age of Universal, the silver age of Hammer, and up through the 1980s and beyond. So another one I decided to check out while I was working. Later in the day, I like to treat these like podcasts. I listen to what like they have to say and then look down if something is particularly interesting. So the first 2 episodes of this series, one featured like about this one is focusing on the 60s and 70s. The other ones were kind of the 2 decades prior, or the 4 decades prior. Now, the subtitle here is Gothic Revival. Now, a majority of this one is focusing on the rise of Hammer Productions. They ushered in a silver age of horror films, using similar monsters that Universal did. Hammer just, added a little bit of sex and blood to help sell these. What is interesting here is that Hammer teamed up with Universal for distribution in the United States for a British company. Carl Laemmle also was even swayed over to working with them. Now, straight horror and monster films weren't the only thing that Hammer did either. They ventured into sci-fi with like the Quatermass stuff that kind of borders into horror as well. They also fleshed out some television serials into feature films. They made noir-inspired murder mysteries and even some great black and white thrillers. Now, the monster movies were their bread and butter, but weren't limited there either. Some other highlights would be the rise of horror hosts on TV in the U.S. that gave a second life to the Universal classics. Hammer would also hire fading U.S. stars to get their film seen in the States. I'll then end out here by saying that this is made well. It feels more like a clip show with all the trailers and scenes that are edited in to help give a visual to things that we're hearing about. There's some great interviews here of filmmakers, writers, and actors who starred in these works. There's a good touch, especially with the age that we're working with. This could be some of the last interviews done by them as well, so I love that time capsule aspect there. Now, some good information here and help to give more background to a good number of films that I've already seen or heard of. Would recommend this on that alone. So my rating here for Monster Madness, the Gothic Revival of Horror, is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. Then my last mini review here of a documentary is going to be The Flatwoods Monster, A Legacy of Fear. This is from 2018. This is a documentary about a cryptid that was written and directed by Seth Breedlove. It features David Spinks. This is from the United States. Currently sitting on a 6.0 on IMDb and a 3-star rating over on Letterboxd, with a synopsis being: unlock a decades-old mystery that includes a government-ordered military examination of purported alien crash site and multiple UFOs seen by countless residents of Braxton County, West Virginia. So another one that I watched at work. This is a cryptid or unexplained phenomenon that I wasn't familiar with, and it's also the next documentary from Seth Breedlove and the Small Town Monsters crew that I hadn't seen yet. So we start this out by hooking our attention learning about Braxton County, West Virginia. There is a creature that the locals have seen. It is now a local folktale that gets passed down through the generations, changing as it gets told, getting taller and taller. There are similarities to nearby Mothman legends. It also predates it, and the incident with the Silver Bridge. It also includes here that it's located almost in the dead center of West Virginia. Now that it's set up, the story here is that these people in the area saw flying saucers. I do like the fact the documentary includes that the sightings started during the heyday when people all over the country were claiming to see them. It does make me wonder if these people were just kind of caught up in the craze, or did they actually see something? Since I can't disprove anything, I'll just leave my thoughts there. Now, this could have been or just seen something that more natural that they don't have a logical explanation for. It doesn't help, as each story kind of differs slightly from the next. It doesn't mean that they aren't true and that fear can't play with memory, just something I felt important to include. Now, I will say here the story is got more staying power than others. The Flatwoods Monster has bled into popular culture where there are toys and even video games. What is wild here is that there are people that aren't even connected to the area anymore. It does make me wonder if like Final Fantasy VIII uses for a side quest where you meet an alien. The Lasting Legacy is something that I'm glad they included. Then to end this out, I do think this is made well enough. The cinematography and framing of things were good. I like the animated CG look of the creature. That was a good touch here. It kind of breaks up just seeing people being interviewed. This does well in setting the stage, and I do think this one feels rushed though. There is less information provided, and I don't know if it was due to not having enough information or if this one just kind of falls short of others that I've seen by this director and this team. Still interesting enough. So my rating here for the Flatwoods Monster is going to be a 5.5 out of 10. This is on Tubi if you are curious about it. So that's all I have here for mini reviews then. Let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
lost my mind. Best friend insanity. I've lost my mind. I'm going crazy. I've lost my mind. Crazy.
And for my first featured review here is going to be The Ugly Stepsister. It goes by the original title of Den Stengi Stenso Staren, or something along those lines. This is from 2025, written and directed by Amelie Blichfeld, and then the stars Leah Myron, Anna Dahl Torp, and Thea Sophia Lochneas. I think it might be how you say that as well. Apologize for any mispronunciations that I have, but this also features Flo Ferraguli, Isaac Komroth, Malte Gardinger, Ralph Carlson, Isaac Apsberg, Lieben Vindenbald, Oksana Sirskanyas, Katerzin Herman, Adam Lundgren, Willie Ramnick Petri, Cecile Force, Kyrie Holm, Agnenska Zulunski, Stefan Kohlhammer, and Philip Lenkowski. So this is a comedy, drama, horror film that also, there's some more subgenres here of body horror, psychological satire, even a little bit of a slasher. I don't know if I go that far, but this is a co-production of a lot of places: Norway, Denmark, Romania, Poland, and Sweden. Currently sitting on a 7.0 on IMDb and a 3.7 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: follows Elvira as she battles against her gorgeous stepsister in a realm where beauty reigns supreme. She resorts to extreme measures to captivate the prince amidst a ruthless competition for physical perfection. So Elvira is being portrayed by Myron here, and so this is one that I learned about through a press release. Now, the information that I saw intrigued me. I wasn't able to get the screener or catch this when it showed at my local theater, but when I learned this was coming to Shudder, I ended up watching it that night. I also made it, as you can tell, a featured review here, as this is my 2025 watch for the week. And then let's go ahead and do some featured notes. I'll start with our director here of Bilchfeld. They have 3 shorts, and this is her feature film debut. Now, she's also a writer, and it looks again like she has this being her feature film debut, and she also wrote 3 shorts. I'm guessing she wrote and directed everything. Then the cast first start with Myron. This is her feature film debut. Now, Torp is her mother in the film, and she has 34 features and 3 shorts. I've seen her in one other project of Dead Snow, has 3 in horror. Her last one isn't out yet, and that's something called The Nix. So then last I'll look at here as Lochneas. Now, she has been in 15 movies and 6 shorts. First of her works that I've seen has 3 in genre, the other 2 being Arctic Void and Project Z. And then let's jump into this movie here then. We start with learning that Elvira is a dreamer. She is in a carriage with her mother, Rebecca, who's portrayed by Torp, and her sister Alma, portrayed by Fagalari. Now, she is going to this manor that belongs to Otto, portrayed by Carlson. Now, Rebecca marries him. Now, he has a daughter of his own, Agnes, portrayed by Lochneas. Now, she plays host to her new stepsisters. Now, this night ends up in tragedy, though. Elvira gets mocked by having cake thrown in her face. She laughs it off, though. Otto then has a heart attack and dies. It is here that Rebecca makes a horrible discovery. He's broke. There isn't much money to even plan a funeral. This upsets Agnes, and she lets out Elvira, who wants to be her friend and, trying to do everything to bridge that gap. Rebecca treats Agnes horrible in return. The younger woman doesn't understand why there isn't enough money to give a proper burial to her father. The money is instead being spent on getting Elvira's braces removed and getting her nose job. The reason for these things is because a local prince, Julian, portrayed by Komroth, and his father, the king, are throwing a ball. The prince is looking for a bride. This is Elvira's dream. She has a book of his poems that's been published, and she is infatuated with him. Now, Agnes and Elvira are sent to a local finishing school that's run by Sophie von Cronenberg, portrayed by Forrest. It is here that Elvira's good nature is broken. She is bullied and mocked. Miss Sophia works with a Madame Vanja, who is portrayed by Herman, who offers Elvira a gift. Now, Elvira has a sweet tooth and struggles to lose weight. The item that she's given is an egg for a tapeworm. Changes come over Elvira through her abuse. Agnes has her own trials to go through in order to attend this ball, also being helped in the form of a supernatural in this dark retelling of the classic fairy tale Cinderella. So that's really my recap and introduction of the characters. Now, where I'm going to start is that with this last idea that I had in my recap, I knew coming in this was going to be a horror take on Cinderella. It was in the press release, and I mean, the ugly stepsister, kind of all these things lined up. What I love, though, is they're telling this from the point of view of one of the wicked stepsisters. I even like what they are having all these characters start out on being fairly likable. It is the more that we meet them, the greater they become. Now that I set it up, let's start to delve into our characters here, and I'll start with our lead of Elvira. She is happy-go-lucky at first. She's madly in love with Prince Julian due to reading his poetry book, then gets smashed when she meets him out in the woods while he's hunting. He doesn't know who she is, and he's mean. Agnes is nice to her at first, but then after her father passes, she gives up that facade. Her mother even makes a remark about her not being attractive. There is then Sophie and the other women at this finishing school. They take this young, naive girl, and she ends up callous like the rest. I do like the character arc and how Myron plays it. It's an interesting, again, to kind of follow one of the stepsisters for this story, just because of kind of how we normally get it framed. I then want to shift over to Agnes. Now, a big thing for this ball is that all the women are supposed to be virgins. I'm not shocked by this, knowing this is set in the past. Now, we know that Prince Julian has carnal knowledge due to what he was said when Elvira was nearby. Now, Agnes is in love with a stable boy for her father's estate of Isaac, portrayed by Gardinger. Now, Elvira catches them and alerts her mother. This upsets her, so she punishes them. Now, something to also include here is that when Elvira being made to be prettier, they start calling Agnes by the name of the fairy tale. They call her Cinderella. There is a subtle supernatural element here where Agnes sees her mother, portrayed by Zaluska. Now, her dress was torn, and she's given help to fix it. This was a good touch. I did like that, where we're almost wondering if there is a supernatural touch here. Now, something I want to shift over to then would be the social commentary. The big one is money. Rebecca married Otto thinking he was rich. This isn't the case. Rebecca is using her position to punish him, and Agnes by letting him rot in a room. She claims they don't have money to bury him. Agnes makes a comment about all this work that Elvira is getting done to be made pretty. Agnes is naturally pretty, so Elvira, contends with that. Rebecca needs Elvira to find a rich husband at this ball, because if it's not the prince or someone else, like what I mean there is that there are royalty and merchants that are in attendance, so her goal is to make sure that Elvira finds a worthy mate. Let's then bring in filmmaking aspects. This is a body horror film. I thought it was clever how it was used. Elvira is using body modification to become prettier. I'm not fully sure that they were doing this in the era that it's set, but I can suspend disbelief in the world of this movie. Now, she has her braces on when we first meet her. Rebecca then has her get a nose job done by a Dr. Estetke, portrayed by Lundgren. Now, this film is also exploring bulimia and eating disorders, with her getting a tapeworm on purpose. There's also this iconic aspect of the Cinderella story that was used here as well. That made me cringe, and I appreciated it. This also uses practical effects when it can. I'm guessing there is probably some CGI. I couldn't necessarily tell, and if it was used, it was for enhancement, which is the best way to use it. Though this part of the film worked for me, and it made me cringe, so, credit to all of that. Then to finish out with this part of the movie, the cinematography and framing help to hide the seams. Something else to include here is low self-esteem and body image issues. How they craft shots of Elvira where we can see that she's self-conscious. I thought that was a good thing to kind of showcase there. This is something that is prevalent today, so I like how it's used through the story set in the past. I wanted to make sure I gave credit there. Other than that, the soundtrack fit for what was needed. So all that's left then would be acting performances. Thought that Myron was good as our lead. It is an interesting route to go with the story to focus on one of the stepsisters from Cinderella, since they always are seemed villainous, especially in like the cartoons and stuff. She gets there in the end, but I love the journey from this naive young woman to this monster in the end. Torp was good as her mother. She does well and means well for her daughters, but she's misguided and greedy. That fits the role. Loch Ness was good as his heroine from the story that we all know. She has a natural beauty, which fits, but she's also a bully. So, I thought that was kind of a good thing there. And, she is treated poorly, so, it's also part of it. Fagerly works as the younger sister Alma. She hasn't become a woman yet. She's probably the most grounded character, but no one listens to her. Thought that the women at the finishing school who were all running for the prince were good. Forrest, Erman, and the other women work in their roles to judge those that are running for suitors. Kalmroth, Gardinger, and the rest of the cast were good, for rounding this out for what was needed there. So in conclusion, this is a solid dark telling of a classic fairy tale. I love the different approaches by focusing on an evil side character and then making them human who is beaten down by those around her to the person that she becomes. There is an interesting ideas explored here. The body horror elements were solid. Bringing those to life with the practical effects cinematography were good. This is well made across the board. I would say that the acting was good to bring the characters to life. I rather enjoyed this one, and I'm definitely going to try to revisit this one for the end of the year. Being on Shudder definitely helps out there, but like I said, rather enjoyed The Ugly Stepsister. So my rating here is going to be an 8 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I think I kind of fleshed out everything that I needed to here, so let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review. And for my second featured review here is going to be Condemned to Live from 1935. This is directed by Frank R. Strayer. It was written, both the story as well as the screenplay, by Karen D. Wolfe. Now, this stars Ralph Morgan, Pedro de Cordoba, and Maxine Doyle, while also featuring the likes here of Russell Gleason, Misha Auer, Lucy Beaumont, Carl Stockdale, Barbara Bedford, Robert Fraser, Ferdinand Schumann Hike, Heidi Shope, Marilyn Nolden, Ted Billings, Frank Brownlee, Horace B. Carpenter, Edward Cecil, Dick Curtis, and Harold Goodwin. This is a drama horror mystery film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 4.8 on IMDb and a 2.9 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being. After a series of murders, a man finds out that his mother was bitten by a vampire bat during her pregnancy, and he believes that he may be cursed. So this is one that I found when compiling a list of horror from 1935. It was one that popped up when looking at our director, as I've seen a few of his previous works. I've also seen 2 of the stars here and other things as well. The title was intriguing, and I was curious how it would play into the story. I did come into this one blind, lining up the year, runtime, and cast members to ensure that it was the correct film, and this is also streaming on Tubi, so that also made it quite easy. So let's do some featured notes then, and I'll start with our director here, Strayer. He directed 75 films and 1 short. I've seen 4 now for 5%. It looks like he did comedy mostly with a series called Blondie, following that character. He did 4 in horror. I've seen them all now with this, The Vampire Bat, The Monster Walks, and The Ghost Walks. Let's then move over to our assistant director here of Melvin Shire. He did 75 films in this role, and I've seen 7, all in horror. He did 8 total there. I've seen Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, Son of Dracula, and Beginning of the End as the top 3. The only one that I'm missing right now is The Cat Creeps. I think this is coming up in the following years. So then we have our writer here of DeWolf. It looks like this is, she looks like she's worked with this director actually on the Blonde series. Now she has 41 total. The first one I've seen actually, her only 1 in horror. Now coming up for the original story, she has 12 since she also did this, but first I've seen, again, only 1 in genre. Then moving over to our cast, I'll start with Morgan. He was in 97 features and 2 shorts. I've seen him in 4 works, all in genre now, where he did 5 total. I've seen The Night Monster, Weird Woman, The Monster Maker, and now this. I have not seen The Creeper as of yet. Then to his co-star of De Cordoba. Now, he was in 97 motion pictures as well, and 3 shorts. I've seen 6. Not horror, he was in Alfred Hitchcock's Saboteur and Samson and Delilah. He did 6 in horror. I've seen 4 with The Beast with 5 Fingers, The Ghost Breakers, Before I Hang, and now this. I have not seen The Devil Doll or The Dark Mirror. Now, the last one might be a lost film if I'm remembering correctly. Now, last will be Doyle. She was in 23 movies and 2 shorts. I've seen her in 2 things, both in genre with this, as well as Lady and the Monster. So then for this movie here, we start in the past. We don't know it at first, though, but there are drums and a man who is unconscious. Now, there's a married couple of Martha, portrayed by Barbara Bedford, and then Franz Christon, portrayed by Schumann Hike. Now, I believe that Franz is the one who's knocked out. Now, Martha is with John Mayne, who is portrayed by Stockdale. Now, there's drums that we hear that are driving them mad, as I've said. Now, they don't know why they're not being attacked, and it seems that the natives are afraid of this cave due to bats living in it. I'll also include here that Martha was pregnant, as the synopsis stated. Now, we then jump into the future. There's a small town here where we have Professor Paul Christon, portrayed by Morgan, who lives and works here. Now, he has an assistant of Zahn, portrayed by Auer. Now, he's a hunchback. Now, something to include here is that he is fiercely loyal to his boss. Also living here is David, portrayed by Gleason, who's in love with Marguerite Maine, portrayed by Doyle. Now, she is interested in Paul, and he has feelings back for her as well. So the stress in this town is mounting, though, as there have been multiple murders. This is uncommon for a place this small, and the townspeople are on edge. They're wanting something to be done immediately. Dr. Anders Bizet, portrayed by De Cordoba, is called in to make sense of the crimes. The people are superstitious, believing that it's the work of a vampire. The corpses are drained of blood, so that kind of falls in line with being this creature. Anders is a man of science and believes there has to be a logical explanation. Now, Paul starts to believe that he's the one committing the crimes. He learned something from his adopted father of Dr. Duprez, portrayed by Fraser. Now, he was a friend of Paul's parents and reveals to him the incident in the cave. Zan wants to protect his employer. Marguerite also wants to help. Paul pushes her away, fearing that he'll attack her. Now, this creates issues, though, as she is determined to help and puts everybody into jeopardy. So let's leave my recap and introduction of the characters. Where I want to start is that this is an interesting take on the idea of the vampire. Now, part of me is shocked at how early into cinema we were getting a different use of it, but being one of the earliest monsters to be portrayed on the screen, I'm also not shocked just knowing that. So now that it's set up, let me delve more into what we're getting here. I want to stick with this main plot point. There's unexplained murders happening in this small town. The sheriff puts in place a curfew to limit potential victims. He doesn't believe that it is supernatural, being a practical man. He enlists the aid of Anders to help prove this. Now, what we get here is, as more are killed and they can't disprove it is a vampire, it it creates a lynch mob. Now they have their torches and are ready to find the killer, probably even have some pitchforks in there as well. There's an interesting commentary that they focus on this person in the town who is different, who is Zan. Their prejudice due to him being a hunchback. It couldn't possibly be someone that they deem normal. That fits into how they perceive people in this day and age, and it still works. And it's kind of crazy that, all these years ago, 90 plus years ago, this is still relevant. Let's explore the title a little bit more. I wouldn't be shocked to learn that this came up with before writing the script. What is great here is that Anders uses it to explain what is happening at the reveal. I won't spoil it, but it made me sit up when he said it and kind of do the old Leonardo DiCaprio thing from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where I'm pointing at the screen and everything. But that was a good use of the dialogue. What I will say is this film doesn't necessarily hide who the killer is for long. This runs just over an hour, and we probably know it at about the 15-minute mark. What is interesting, though, is that this is a grounded take on this creature of the vampire. I won't reveal if the killer is the monster or if it's just a mental illness, but regardless of the explanation, there is an affliction here, and I appreciated that. Now, another theme that I picked up on that I wanted to talk about would be the duality of man. If the killer isn't supernatural, this would be borrowing more from like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Our villain is normal. He is a member of society, which is until night falls. Sticking in line with this classic story and narrative device, the killer might not even realize what they're doing either. Then going along with this, there is like repression and unacknowledged desires. I don't want to spoil fully who the killer is, but there does seem to be a correlation about having unfamiliar feelings causing this change to come over them, and maybe, it's the love of a woman that is the cause. Then the last part of the story that I want to go into here would be this love triangle. The person I feel bad for is David. He is in love with Marguerite. She doesn't share those feelings because she is in love with Paul. He feels the same way back to her. It is when he starts to descend into madness that he pushes her away. He's doing the right thing as he doesn't want to hurt her. Now, she is willing to put herself at risk in order to help him, and I thought this added a layer to the story, and I appreciated that. So what helps to bring this to life, though, would be the acting performances. The best one would go to Morgan. I also think that he is given the most to work with as our lead. I like that we get this baseline before he starts to worry about that he's a killer. There's an interesting concept that it could be self-fulfilling prophecy, that he's worrying so much that it might drive himself crazy. D. Cordoba was solid as his friend who works with the police to solve the case. Doyle works to help complicate the situation for Paul. I like Gleason in a similar way as well. Our and the rest of the cast kind of push things to where they end up, so credit to everybody there. All that's left in for a little bit of trivia here is going to be the filmmaking aspects. I thought the cinematography was fine. There weren't many shots that necessarily stood out. I'd say the same for the framing. I did like the use of these caves. That adds almost like a mythical aspect that there could be a supernatural explanation to what is happening. I do appreciate adding a wrinkle like that. There isn't much in the way of effects, but also doesn't really need them. Other than that, the soundtrack was, worked for what was needed. The best part of the drums in the beginning that added tension, making us worry about this group that is in this cave as, they are surrounded, or at least that's what it kind of feels like there. So in the trivia here, the reuses some costumes and set design dressings from Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. Uses the same music and sets as the vampire Bat. The first earliest telecast was back in July of 1941 in New York City. Shot in 10 days, and then the failure of the original copyright holder to renew the film's copyright resulted this into falling into public domain, meaning that virtually anybody who could duplicate and sell a VHS DVD copy of this, therefore many of them are kind of in poor quality and have been duped from like a second or third generation or more. I believe I found this one on YouTube, so it kind of explains it there, is that this is in public domain, so anybody can kind of put this out and do whatever they want. So in conclusion, this has got more going on than you'd expect for a film that runs over just an hour. I will say that I love taking this monster, the vampire, and then making it a grounded approach. There could be a curse here, or maybe just mental illness. I like the deeper ideas of the dangers of mob mentality and judging people who are different. The acting was solid to bring these characters to life. This is made well enough. The best part would be the drums that are used early into the soundtrack. Not a great film, but I do think it's more under the surface than you'd expect, and that makes it a bit of a gem for me from this era. So my rating here then for Condemned to Leave is going to be a 7 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily think there's anything I need to delve a little bit deeper into here for this one, so let me go ahead and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Are you looking for a movie podcast with deep dives, interviews, and thoughtful film analysis?
We ain't got none of that. What do we got?
You want to hold the bucket?
Right, I'll hold the bucket, sit in the cup
chair.
chair.
With I will never blink. I'll just be there holding the bucket.
I will never blink on her drapes, most likely. You look like a drape jizzer.
R.I.P. that sweet, sweet pussy.
It is known that Jessica Tandy had the sweetest pussy in Hollywood.
If you don't know, Google it. Don't Google Jessica Tandy's pussy, you guys. Don't do it. Don't do it. Doom Generation.
Available anywhere you find podcasts.
And I have a great offer here that I wanted to go ahead and extend to all you listeners out there for oldglory.com. This is a place where you can get over 300,000 items for music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture fans, featuring officially licensed merch from iconic bands and top sports teams. Discover your perfect fan gear and save with my exclusive discount. And that is going to be Cinephile 1. But here you get a 15% discount off of any product, and this is exclusive for something that I'm doing and for what has been offered to me. And I mean, this has things like artists here: Bob Marley, the Beatles, Grateful Dead, the Rolling Stones, Metallica, and more. We also have sports fans have stuff here for your favorite teams with official gear from the NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, and NCAA, showcasing your team pride in style. And they even have some stuff here that celebrate, entertainment, TV shows, movies, lifestyle brands, and it means some quirky gifts to fan favorite apparel. There's something for everybody. With free standard shipping and same day order processing, Old Glory delivers fast and reliable service with every purchase. Whether shopping for yourself or looking for a perfect gift, Old Glory is your one-stop shop for iconic, high-quality merch that reflects your love for music and sports, as well as like pop culture. And I mean, kind of just running ththrough some of this stuff. This is a family-owned superstore since 1969. They're known for their quality and customer service. You can get exclusive selection of graphic tees, hoodies, hats, and accessories. Represent your favorite sports team with official fan gear. Discover quirky gifts, like I was saying, and fun pop culture apparel. Perfect place to shop for, this type of stuff. And there's a vast selection of entertainment-themed products, including movies and TV shows if you're not necessarily into some of the other things. And enjoy reliable and fast service with Old Glory's commitment to customer satisfaction, the ultimate source for high-quality, licensed fan merchandise for all ages. Like I said, my promo code is going to be Cinephile1, all one word. So if you're kind of interested, go ahead and check out their website here in my show notes, as I'll have I actually have more details down there for you as well. And welcome back one last time here, and just to kind of go through my social medias and stuff. If you'd like to send me an email, you can send that at journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. You can send me any sort of feedback, or if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and shoot them there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if you want to send me any screener links or anything like that, anything podcast related, you can send it via that way. If you'd like to read any of the written reviews, I'll direct you to Reviews of the Dead, and that's horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to become friends with me on Facebook, I'm David Michigan Garrett Jr. On Twitter, I'm Buckeye from Mish. Letterboxd, I'm David OSU. On Instagram, I'm David OSU87. On Threads, I'm David OSU87. And then Journey with a Cinephile has its own Instagram at Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. Now, all of these ones I will be sharing like my ratings on, whatnot. I know for Letterboxd, all of the reviews are going to be for horror and non-horror alike. Instagram, I will be sharing over there is my different like posters and everything for things that I'm reviewing. My personal account, you might see some personal pictures every now and then if I can remember to take them. And then, kind of same thing for Threads. And then Journey with a Cinephile is going to be more of just kind of posting podcast-related different stuff over there. And I'll also direct you to the Nightclub Discord channel, as I have a little section over there where we have some good conversations. I post all of my reviews and any new podcast episodes or some of the things I'm watching when I actually have time to post that. So keep an eye out over there, and I'll have the link for that and everything else in the show notes there. And then I'm also going to direct you, a way that you can actually listen to the show is going to be through the Pod Nation TV. This is a streaming service and everything like that. There will be a link in the blog posts for all of my episodes, so if you'd like to listen to it that way, it's kind of a cool little thing. You can definitely do that through like Roku TV, and there's some other apps for it as well, just as another way for you to consume this podcast if you decide to. There's also a lot of other great shows that are on that network as well. So then for my next episode, it's going to be another one of my Voyage to the Fives. I believe this is going to be my number 9 of doing these, and the featured reviews are going to be One Fright Night. I've actually already watched this one. I watched it last night, and then I should be going later today of recording this to go see Sinners before that leaves the theater. I finally have a way to have some coverage here at home, so I can go check that out. My Voyage to the Fives rewatch is going to be Cat's Eye. This is an anthology from Stephen King stories. And then Hard Eyes is going to be my 2025 rewatch. I know I also have a screener that I'll throw on there, but I'll also have more mini reviews for you on top of that. So I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this outro except say, that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening. and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending.